And welcome to the Star Wars Reporter podcast, the official podcast of StarWarsReporter.com. Today, I'm really looking forward to the topic today. We're going to be talking about Star Wars fandom, which is, as of late, it's a divisive subject, to say the least, to talk about. So whenever someone asks me about Star Wars questions when it comes to the controversial things, I just like to nod and pretend I don't speak English. But let us introduce you to everyone tonight that we have. We have Trooper Todd.
Hello.
And we also have Revenge of the Jason.
How's it going, man? I just want to throw a shout out to the millions of members of the Ewok Appreciation Club who are tuning in tonight. Hi, everybody.
I'm not only a member, I'm the president.
I'm a client.
And tonight we have a guest I've been really looking forward to bringing on. And I was hoping that the podcast would get really good before we brought him on. And we have special guest, Adam Slobodzian.
Hey!
Oh, you guys.
So, Adam is a doctoral candidate in marketing.
Yeah. I don't know what my official title is. A PhD student. Yeah.
PhD student. Adam was put on to me by another coworker because he was doing some research on Star Wars fandom. So we got to talk for about an hour. He asked me a whole bunch of Star Wars questions, and I was able to tell my wife it was for a study for university, and I wasn't just being a dork for an hour.
It's research, baby, research.
It's research, right? I'm helping the world. So I'm always going to fall on that, right, as the excuse of research for the university.
It's to make the world a better place, Steve. Right, quite frankly, I'm sure
it does. It does.
And it sounds good.
So, thanks for coming and doing this. You have no idea what you got yourself into, but first of all, I think we'll start with you, Adam. Why don't you kind of tell us about maybe a little bit about your background and kind of the research and the reasons for it that you're doing this, the Star Wars research.
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, my name is Adam Slobodzian. I'm a second-year PhD student in marketing at Smith School of Business, Queen's University. I come from out west, from Saskatoon, and did my bachelor's degree and my master's degree in marketing, and I went and worked for a while, and I just loved the university and studying consumers, studying marketing. So I decided to do my PhD. I've always been a fan of Star Wars, and a really unique opportunity came up where I got to sort of bridge my two passions, right? My passion for research and marketing, and my passion for Star Wars. And it was interesting. I was talking with my supervisor. Who was helping me out with this project. Her name is Dr. Tandy Thomas at Smith School of Business, and we were talking about how weird a lot of these narrative brands are. Like, how weird the fans can be. It's like, and it was sort of inspired by that Hayden Christensen quote. I don't even know if he said it, but he said something along the lines of like, nobody hates Star Wars like Star Wars fans. Right, so you have these people so passionate about Star Wars, right? So equally passionate, and they believe such very different things when it comes to the brand. And we thought, oh my goodness, this doesn't really align with anything that we know about brands, right? Traditionally, brands are these things made by marketers, and to be a strong brand, you need a single identity with a singular meaning in the market. And that wasn't happening with Star Wars fans, right? The more we looked at it, the more we thought, man, this is crazy. These people love it equally. They're extremely passionate about it, but they can't agree on anything. So that was really the genesis of this whole thing is, how can equally loyal fans believe such vastly different things and still remain loyal and engaged and interact with the brand? So yeah, here we are.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that's what a way. It just feels like, wow, you've really opened up a giant, I'm going to say nicely, wound to jump into, right? Because since maybe the Disney takeover of Star Wars, right? It's been kind of weird in the Star Wars fandom, and I'm not sure if that has anything to do with just the explosion of social media, right? Where it's like before you would just get together with your friends, or and complain or praise your favorite fandom, and then it turned into, now you can complain and go crazy to the world now, really easy.
Yeah,
like Twitter, Facebook, and stuff. Yeah.
This is great.
Well, don't you think like social media has been like the big start of this big, huge fandom sort of thing? Because everybody has a platform now that can stand on and spew out whatever kind of trash they want to spew out, or good stuff too, right? But usually there's no kind of, I find on social media there's no kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Borders, like not the borders, like preservation.
Filter.
Sort of like,
There's no filter.
you filter. That's the word I was looking for. There's no filter. Just they spew out anything, whether it's right or wrong, or and it's usually to the max, right? And I just find that's been kind of a toxic environment.
Yeah.
That was another interesting component too. Is like when we tried to look at like past research that's been done on communities and brand communities of fans. A lot of the research has been done like in person with like Jeep communities or Harley Davidson communities where they meet up together. But now you add like the connectivity of the internet onto this, and we have people from all different parts of the world. Like you said, they're no filter. They're sharing their opinions openly with others, and that that has made things challenging. But that's also kind of a beauty of Star Wars fans too, right? Is we're everywhere, and the internet is this awesome tool where we've organized ourselves on different forums, different chat groups, and we can share and debate and converse with fans who we agree with and debate with fans we disagree with. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword in that sense.
Have you noticed?
So,
well, sorry, go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
No,
you're the host. You go ahead, buddy. I like your barbecue. I like the smell of it. You go ahead, buddy.
Wow.
I like what you're cooking.
Wow, you sound like my wife. That's awesome. So no, I was just going to say, has it always been this way? Where we find it's, there's some toxicity in the fandom. Has it always been that way, or is it just kind of, expanded because of the accessibility with Twitter and Facebook and other social media? Or is it also just new fans entering into the fandom that's causing this?
As the true academic I am, I'm going to say probably a bit of both, right? Probably a little bit of everything, right? I'm sure that we've seen this before, of course, with the internet, and especially with Reddit, which was one of the main sources that we used for having a direct line to fan groups, as well as some other popular forum chats. But Reddit especially is just exploded. Right, so many people are on there and connecting with each other in a way that we couldn't have even imagined before being a Star Wars fan. It was in the schoolyard, whenever you get on the playground with your friends and you chat Star Wars, and you bring your action figures and you play with your friends, and you bring your lightsabers, or you put your markers together and go have a lightsaber duel. The internet has exploded that, right? I think it's always been there, but we're seeing it. It's more visible because everyone's connecting so easily.
Yeah, I remember, if I look back when the prequels came out, right? When the prequels came out, there's the people who liked them, there's people who didn't like them, right? But again, it just didn't seem so harsh, or But when now you look at the new trilogies come out, right? Especially after let's just bring up Episode 8. Right, there's a big, huge divide where there's many people with very strongly opinion for best Star Wars movie ever or worst Star Wars movie ever. To me, that seems like the one where it's the biggest division of all time, where just people just seem to lose their minds is a strong word, but lose their mind, right? Like they get really, really angry. when we discuss episode 8 for some reason. Do you find that in your studies at all?
Oh, 100%. That's probably the most debated movie. In all of the, however tens of thousands of comments that we've analyzed, that one is still the movie that is very, very much debated by fans. But I think that, that raises another interesting point, especially, when you think about the context of marketing research is, traditionally it's viewed as the producer puts out something of meaning and the consumer, consumes it and integrates it within their existing belief system. But what we're finding is that, the fans are active producers of what that means to them, right? And what we've seen in analyzing discussions among fans is they will actively change the meaning so that things align with their personal beliefs. And I'm sure all Star Wars fans have heard of the headcanon before, right? We all have these internal personal beliefs, and that was one of the big things that we found is that maintaining a level of individual narrative continuity, like continuity in what you believe about the narrative, was a huge point for many fans, to the point where fans will actively reject movies because it doesn't align with their beliefs of the brand, right? And episode 8 is a perfect example of that, right? Even Mark Hamill said, "That's not my Luke Skywalker." And that is what we found, is that people would actively avoid that movie just to preserve stability in their narrative continuity of what their Star Wars means to them. So I think that's super fascinating that, fans do that very actively. And, we're not these sort of passive consumers that just accept everything. We're very much parts of what Star Wars means to us.
It seems like the producers, and maybe, and you actually asking this as a question, like, and how much it seems to me in recent years, even the fan response on social media is being paid more and more attention to by the producers of such things like Lucasfilm and Disney themselves. It seems more and more they're responding to the fans' reaction with their own product and shows. And you could probably say that for a lot of franchises, I imagine. I'm just curious, has that been like an exponential thing, or just in recent years, it seems to me like it's really, wow, they're really starting to listen and respond to what the fans are saying, and how much of that is for good or for ill? At what point is that too much?
Well, for good or for ill, honestly, it's for both, right? But like you guys were saying before, I think social media, for sure, all various types of social media has really exponentially grown this. Like you said before, when movies came out, you sort of relied on a test segment of consumers who came in and viewed the movie, and you sort of research their sentiment. Oh, is this good? Is it bad? And you sort of gauge earlier reviews, and then you look at box office ratings and critics ratings, and that's how they sort of judge this. But now producers, Disney especially, I mean, you think about the brilliant marketing machine that Disney is, with the internet and social media, you have a direct connection to the people who love your brand, right? And love your franchise and love your stories. So it for sure, absolutely plays a role in how they produce things. They absolutely do their research, do their homework, and they have people participating in these communities, doing their homework to understand what fans do like and what fans don't like. And I think we've even seen that with this new trilogy, right? From movie to movie.
For sure.
I believe the actress's name is Kelly Marie Tran. I think that was her name. She was in a big Disney movie, which was great as well. But the role of her character, right? We've seen it take a very, very different turn.
Right.
And it would be naive to say that wasn't based up in some part to fan reaction.
Well, even if you look back, let's go back to the prequels, right? Like, I'm pretty sure George Lucas had a bigger role for Jar Jar Binks, right? But the fan backlash over Jar Jar Binks in episode 1 really curtailed his appearance in 2 and 3, right? He reduced a really minor character, which had a big impact on what happened in the universe. But again, less Jar Jar was much better for the Star Wars brand in episode 2 and 3. So I believe even back then they were listening, because social media wasn't huge back then or even existed, but they were definitely listening back then even too. So I think, like Adam was saying, like I think Disney's got their finger on the pulse, and I do believe, like you're saying, they made significant changes with that character from episode 8 to episode 9 for sure.
Do you find that companies pay attention too much to certain things like Twitter? I find that, I don't have the stats in front of me, but the amount of people that actually use Twitter is not very high, and it's even lower for people who are even active. So it's like a small fraction of a percentage that I feel that the industry is putting too much weight in when like 10 or 12 people start tweeting that they're angry about something, and then you have a multi-billion-dollar company like Disney that says, wow, those 15 people are really upset about that. We should really do something, because that's what everyone in the US is thinking. And it's like, it's Twitter, and not everyone's on it, right? There's only X amount of millions out of, 7 billion people.
For some reason, negative voices are heard more than the positive voices, right?
Twitter,
and that's always the way it
sure.
is. Right? Like, they say, like, a bad comment about a restaurant or a store will travel faster than a good comment, right? And I just think that's the problem with this, that you have these people screaming, and because they're loud, everybody's going to listen to them. I don't think it makes sense or a good idea, but that's right. How I see it, sort of thing.
Yeah, and that is also one of the perils of using social media, Twitter especially, as a market research tool. Is you have these people who have amassed these followers and now own a significantly larger share of voice than other fans. They share their negative views, and those views get shared as easily as a retweet and a like, and it sort of explodes. So yeah, for sure, that shows you the perils of relying on social media, because that really gives you a view into a very small segment of fans, what they're feeling, when really the broad fandom is a mosaic of beliefs and perspectives and opinions. So it's, that's absolutely very dangerous to rely on only that. And I don't know Disney's research process, but I would hope that a company as big as that one is using more sources than Twitter alone.
Well, yeah, I think they probably a huge team, and they probably spend a lot of money on it too. I'm just guessing.
Right.
Sorry, Steve, I interrupt you.
Well, no. As someone in marketing, right? I mean, is it something that they obviously shouldn't rely on? Is random social media and kind of rely on the old-fashioned, research and test markets and yada yada yada, right? Like, but sometimes it feels like Twitter or social media is holding a little more weight. It's because it's faster. Do you think maybe that's why? So they're kind of gauging the fandom mood through social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's as far as like short-term research goes, definitely, Twitter provides that sort of litmus test. Is you could easily see what's trending, and if you're not, trending positively, you're going to have some serious discussions in the short term, right? It's not going to feel good for you, right? So I think it's important, and a company like Disney and many marketers know that. The best research, especially market research, is multi-method. So they're not going to be relying on one source of data. They're going to be, talking to people and looking at other sources, other popular forums. Of course, what the box office reviews are, how much money they're making. Of course, there's going to be those. But yeah, as far as short-term sentiment goes, Twitter provides that in spades.
So in your research, what kind of fans have you been talking to? Like, I know you were talking to really awesome bearded ones like me, but I mean, kind of like, hey, and we're all kind of beard bros here, so we can say that. But what kind of spectrum have you been looking at for different fans, and like, how are you going about questioning them?
Yeah, for sure. So this, to be honest with you, this research has taken so many turns over the course of pretty much the year or year and a half that I've been doing it now. But we're looking at active fans, right? Those people who are actively engaged with the franchise in some way, whether that be engagement with a forum or fan group online, or formal engagement with like an organized fan base, such as the one we are in right now. But those types of fans, I have had some discussions with more casual fans who don't really actively participate, and that's all well and good. But really, my interest is in those active fans who who are very loyal to the franchise. The franchise definitely has some very significant personal meaning. And even unique meaning to the person, which is what got me interested in doing research on Star Wars. Like, I'm sure every fan has a personal story, from growing up of, what Star Wars means to them. And, that played a huge role in my decision to do research in Star Wars. And, that comes out in the interviews and when talking with fans too, is we all have this very cool personal connection with the brand that, can't always be orchestrated by a marketer, right? Those special moments that we have with the franchise and, with family members that we watch the franchise with, play with the action figures, that can't always be orchestrated. So I think that's a really cool part of it as well.
So when you're talking to people, Adam, like, I'm sure you've talked to fans who are really happy with how things have went. You maybe talked to some people who aren't happy with the direction Star Wars went with the films and stuff. So which ones are more, which side is more interesting to talk to? Do you like, because sometimes it can be fun to hear what people say when they're upset about things too. So from your perspective, which one is more fun to talk to?
I've only interviewed one person so far who has actively accepted everything and is very open with their acceptance of all narrative material from both George Lucas and Disney. And that was a very interesting interview as well. Just talking through some very controversial movies and pieces of the brand, as everything was openly accepted, which was super fascinating. But I mean, if you talk to many other Star Wars fans, I would say that was a very unique case. Okay. You're rarely going to find people that accept absolutely everything. And that's what makes it so interesting, is that, people adjust the meaning, or they look at things a different way, and they like aspects of the movie or book or comic book or video game, and they don't like other ones. So they'll ignore those little bits, or they'll rework, the backstories of characters in their head to sort of align with what they want to believe with the brand, which I think is super, super cool and super fascinating. So in the rare exception, you're going to have someone who accepts everything, but it's super interesting to find out what people don't like and how they sort of cope with not liking that aspect, and then of course what they do like.
Yeah, I find it interesting. It just kind of reminded me of just kind of the people that like everything about Star Wars, like everything. And I remember coming across one of these discussions on a Facebook group, and it was about Rise of Skywalker. And someone was talking about, you remember that character that was in the movie for like 4 or 5 minutes, Babu Frick? And it was like that mechanic that was working on C-3PO. It was voiced by Mark Hamill, which is kind of funny. But person went on and started off this conversation and was seriously, legitimately saying that was the best Star Wars character out of all the movies. Anything created by Star Wars, and it wasn't a troll. That was the greatest character in Star Wars ever. And so people were fleshing it out like, okay, this is a troll. And they're like, really? Like the best? And the person was like giving reasons for it. And it wasn't a troll. And I just thought to myself, thinking that now, this is this person that says there was no bad Star Wars. ever. Like, you know, it just seems like it's either black or white, right? Like you can't say I love this movie, I just didn't like this one or two things in it, without everyone saying you're either a hater, you're not, you know. It seems to be more of this, you're not a fan because you didn't like every single aspect of it.
Apparently, Jennifer
that's
loves it
super
all.
true. I mean,
Oh, Jen is in the chat. She says it's me. I like all of it. Oh, but come
Jennifer, you
on,
proved
Jen.
me
There's
wrong. I love
certain
it.
aspects you're saying, oh, I wish they would have filmed it this way instead, but I still love it. But sorry, thoughts on that?
Actually, that does bring me back to another interesting finding, is that I think Star Wars fans have gotten such a bad rap over the years that Star Wars fans ourselves have started believing that, and I've started to see that in the comments as well. Hi, Jennifer. In that fans will actively identify what their own views are, and then immediately believe that the rest of the fandom or other fans hate it. Like they'll start their comment by saying, I might be one of the few people who like this movie, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's, a very interesting phenomenon in its own right, is that we have this belief that Star Wars fans are so negative about the brand, yet we all love it. And most of us, a vast majority of us, are very accepting of other fans and always happy to see other fans. But we have this belief that, fans are gonna disagree with us in a very negative way. And that's just, it's fascinating from a research perspective, but it's a strange thing.
It's so weird because. Go ahead, Jason. You go first, Jason. Go ahead.
I was just going to quick say that I think so much of this in our time now, I think so much of it is exacerbated by social media and just the we've been discussing it here, and then just with any other topic. I think those perceptions, when you talk about it on social media, and some of the extremism of the fans and whatnot, and it was a different relationship, like growing up with it. And then when I talk about Star Wars or enjoy it in the same room with people or with good friends, I think so much of it is perpetuated just by the social media. Like I'll just say real quick and then I'll be quiet. Like with Twitter, where we're talking about how huge an impact Twitter has had, and Todd, you were kind of talking about this before. And what I've noticed when I look at articles, like I'll see the headline of an article and, oh, the fans, blah, 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 from like a major news source, like, oh, the fans are all complaining. And then I go, and it's like one guy says something and it has like 5 likes or whatever on it. I'm like, no, they're taking the one line. But I'm like, that's so much different than had he just been isolated with just your friends. Or I don't know, it's just such a different perception to me between the social media and between what it's like to actually share it with your friends.
So we got a comment from Goldberry, says some of the hostility, for lack of a better word, is a bit generational, not age, but more how old you are in the fandom. Yeah,
it can be.
That's a very interesting point. And that actually leads into where my research is going now, actually. So this is almost a perfect segue for me to shamelessly self-promote what I'm doing right now. So
yes.
Yeah, we've sort of found this as well, in that it's not necessarily hostility, but definitely there is generational differences, and that to me is a fascinating point, is that we're seeing that sort of the era, and now I'm going to preface this by saying this isn't everybody, right? This isn't everybody, but for sure, the era in which you grew up with the franchise definitely influences how you view the brand and how you interact with the brand. And that is another interesting point that is where my research is going now, is depending on which era you were raised with the brand, or you grew up with the brand, or you interacted with the brand, it definitely frames what your beliefs about the narratives are, and how you adjust those narratives in your head to fit with what you believe. And I think we see that a lot with, definitely original trilogy and prequel trilogy for sure. Even those fans that are very hardcore into like Legends material, and even the animated series, for sure we see differences in how you view the brand. It sort of frames the way you look at the brand in a different way, and I also think that's super fascinating. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no.
Totally. Absolutely. Like, I know.
Yep.
Oh,
Go ahead,
everyone's talking. You go. It's your show, Steve. You go ahead.
No, Todd, you go ahead. Go
I was going
ahead.
to say, for me, I was 5 years old when Star Wars 1977 hit the theaters, right? I saw it. I'm 5 years old. And you're so impressionable at 5 years old. It was the greatest thing I've ever saw in my life. And then my whole life, growing up through my teens, was all Star Wars. Like me and Steve, we were buddies, right? And we up until our teens, we talked Star Wars. We're in high school, we talked Star Wars, right? And so I know when the prequels came out, I was one of those people that was defending everything about it, even though maybe I was defending it more. I gave more credit than what it deserved, sort of thing. After we actually, because recently we went back and we've been watching all the Star Wars movies, and yes, I still think the prequels are good, but not as good as I was defending them. How hard I defended them before, but there's that kind of that love of Star Wars. I have to protect the brand, right? And so I look past all its flaws, maybe, and then now when it comes to for some reason the new trilogy, you see the flaws a lot more. Because I remember seeing, I watched, The Force Awakens, episode 7. I left the theater, felt like I was 5 years old again. Felt really good, excited. It was awesome. Saw Last Jedi. I was like, was that good? I don't know if it was good. what? Yeah, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. I remember sitting in the theater after the credits ended and going, did I like it? Like, I've never had that before. So I was kind of crushed, right? When I left the theater, my wife goes, did you like it? I don't know if I liked it. It was so weird, right? And then of course there's in the episode 8, you go into episode 8, you're hopefully they're going to fix something, and you watch it and you go, okay, it's better, but is it still good? Like, you have the big question mark, right? So I think it's so interesting, like you're saying, depends how your first experience and how it can change your perception, sort of thing, right? And like me now, 49-year-old Todd is much different than 5-year-old Todd. What and being working in media and films myself, like story's huge, and some things aren't as forgivable nowadays as they were when I was 20 or when I was 5. If that makes any sense. But it's just interesting. I find how there's been so many franchises forever, right? It seems like back in high school, me and Steve used to fight about. I was a big Friday the 13th fan. So that's a huge franchise, right? Steve used to make fun of me all the time about how I loved Friday the 13th, right? It was Nightmare on Elm Street, you name it, right? Back then, they didn't care about stories. They didn't care, just it was all about making money. But it just seems a little bit more forgivable. But for some reason, now there's Marvel, now there's the Fast and Furious, you name it. There's so much different franchises out there, but none of them seem as harsh as Star Wars is. There's that big, huge divide. So it's just a very fascinating thing where everything else seems to be like, I can't get into Fast and the Furious, but everybody says they're awesome. I haven't seen any of them. I've seen a couple of them, but I couldn't watch the later ones. But, I don't understand why, and everybody seems to love them. There's not a lot of hate for them. Why is Star Wars so...
There's an ownership of it, though, too. I think just how you're saying, we old guys have been with it forever, and it's things like that, just like a band that you're, really super into, it becomes yours, and Star Wars has been around before all of those, and there's an ownership to it. It's mine. So we all feel really passionate about it. And just to leave it just real quick, one thing that Adam, when you began your last point too, about how different sects of fans, SECTS sects of fans, I'm talking, people are into the prequels or into Clone Wars, and this is something actually, if Jen, you're watching, would back me up on. When people are really into, like, I know for one thing, people are hardcore into Clone Wars, and you learn more about it, changes your perception of some of the movies too. Like, we've even had discussions where we'll say, oh, this aspect of the movies, I didn't really totally latch on to it. And it's like, no, it's actually backed up by the Clone Wars. And So you get different levels of fandom appreciating from those different perspectives, and it affects. If you're into this part of the movies or shows, it's going to affect how you see the others, and vice versa.
Yep, 100%. And that's, I mean, that's one of the beauties of narrative brands is, right, they want you to engage more so that you understand and you connect with more of the narrative, right? But for sure, I mean, that's a huge point. And another point you said about ownership is absolutely the case, right? And I think it's, many marketers make the mistake of, especially Disney, hopefully not Disney, but making the mistake that, though they legally own the name Star Wars, they don't actually own the brand, right? It's the fans that own what the brand means and just get to decide what the brand means. And that's an important thing to remember and to note is that, a lot of the power in that comes from the consumers, comes from the fans, the loyal people who the brand means so much for.
Right.
Right. Jen totally agrees with that. Now, a question regarding the research. What are, and we've kind of talked about it here, or we're all bringing it up. It always seems to be like things kind of went south during The Last Jedi. In your research, what are some of the kind of the answers or the responses you're getting on, kind of the negative aspect of the fandom? Like what are people's thoughts on kind of the direction of how the films were going, as in with the sequel trilogy?
It's actually kind of fascinating. I mean, you see, like I said, that some fans actively reject. I think you see that a lot with Episode 8, right? As soon as Luke didn't live up to many people's perceived expectations, I don't believe Episode 8 anymore. I don't subscribe to that, but a lot of fans are really, reimagining the narratives and reconstructing, and for like reimagining they're sort of making up their own backstory of, why they think this happened to Luke or why Luke acted in this way. And, these things which aren't necessarily, official canon, it's what they believe. They've, imagined this new backstory, this new explanation, in order to have that align with them. For others, it's very fascinating in that they sort of reconstruct the narrative and pull from different materials within the Star Wars brand and also outside the Star Wars brand. So I've seen a lot of people pull from like Legends material, especially for Episode 9, and Palpatine's return was, that already happened in Legends. That fits perfectly with what I believe. They just made that aspect canon. So I totally agree with that. Some interesting conversations around Luke is, pulling from Star Wars material and other fictional material, such as I think I saw like the Legend of Excalibur, and using Excalibur as like a metaphor for the transition that Luke went through, in that he needed to lose in that way to actually become the greatest Jedi, because he made all of those mistakes that the past Jedi did of, rushing into a war and becoming generals, having these premonitions, these foresights of bad things to happen, and then trying to act in a certain way. He needed to do that in order to become what the Jedi were meant to be. So he became like, pulling from all these different sources to sort of reconstruct what that narrative means in your head so that it aligns. So I think that's super fascinating in what's going on. It shows that people are actively engaging with the narrative and getting it to fit in their heads in very neat ways. Sometimes it does fit. I mean, sometimes we see, something fit cleanly, and other times it creates these inconsistencies. I'm sorry, I'm just reading the comment here.
Yeah, this is from Ross. It says, what's the best way to step back from that and let others enjoy what they see is the personal part of Star Wars, and open yourself up to other points of view.
I like that. I like that, Ross.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important, man, because it does come down to a personal Yeah, I see Star Wars, a lot of things about it that most other people might not or totally agree with. And it's okay to like any aspect of it, even something that maybe people consider not as important or epic. Like I like some of the small little things of that one little scene, even if it's something just enjoying it visually or the dialogue or whatever it is. That it's a good point, and people should feel free to enjoy any aspect of it, which is partially, I think, partly what you're saying.
I'll tell you though a story about The Last Jedi, and I might have said this before. Is my oldest daughter, of my two daughters, she was more obsessed with Star Wars, right? And her favorite character was Luke Skywalker. And I remember we went when Episode 7 came out. We saw it in the theater 10 times, right? That was our big badge of honor. We saw it 10 times in theater, and then when we went to go see The Last Jedi, we saw it one time, and don't own the DVD and have never watched it on Disney Plus. And when the movie ended and the credits were coming up, she didn't say anything. I was like, okay, well, let's get going. So we go out to our car and never said a word all the way home. Walked in the house. She walked into her room, closed the door, and she would not talk about it. And then, so what was she, 12 or 13 at the time? And it was a good month before she just started saying some things that, without me influencing her, like saying anything to influence her, she was pointing out things besides just Luke Skywalker that she didn't like about the film. And it's funny because it sounded like a lot of the mainstream critics that were criticizing the movie. And I just thought, I think some of the criticism that I heard was it's all these old guys that just don't like the fact that Luke Skywalker was blank. Well, here's my 12-year-old daughter saying, you know what I mean? And from that, that was it for Star Wars from her. And it was really interesting because in the end of Episode 7, when we see Luke Skywalker, we just got over seeing Han Solo die, and she cried. And so at the end of the movie, she says to me, "That's sad, but if they kill Luke Skywalker, I think I'm done with Star Wars." And I went, ew, because I figured, like everyone else, he's probably going to die in Episode 9 at some point, right? And I was
Yeah,
like,
of course,
ugh.
yeah.
I'm like, oh, honey,
I'm sure it'll be fine.
And she went through with her promise because I basically had to force her to go see Solo with me. And then that's it. Like, she doesn't, like, I couldn't pay her $1 million to talk about Star Wars. So, it's quite sad. But, getting back to your research, I do, what are some of the other interesting things that you found out from fans, good or bad? I mean, I do like Absolutely. The one about the people who love everything about Star Wars. That's pretty awesome. But what are some of the things that you've found out so far?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that perfectly leads to the flip side of that, right? I've talked a lot about, how people rework things in their heads, to sort of stabilize that narrative for themselves. But that doesn't happen for a lot of people, right? We found that, actually, when integrating these new aspects of narrative, fitting it in with their beliefs, it results in destabilization, right? So it's not always clean and nice, and they're the happiest fan afterwards because they've worked things out with other fans, and they've worked it out in their head. That doesn't happen. Like, especially for Episode 8 is, people saw it, and unfortunately for a lot of fans, that was it, because they mistreated, a lot of fans felt they mistreated Luke Skywalker, right? The hero of the galaxy. And that was too much. Because he's such a personal character for everyone, right? He's such a personal hero for everyone that taking that was too much for some fans. And for other fans, even more fascinating is they picked out all of these issues they have with the movie and the narrative and the different elements of the story, and they continue to be fans, right? So I think that's super interesting as well, right? There's all these things they don't necessarily like, but you know what? That's okay. I'll still be a fan. Like I still like enough of the franchise that it means a lot to me. I'll still engage with it. And interestingly enough, is when we were researching for episode 9, and we were doing a lot, analysis of fan conversations, is when it didn't live up to the expectations, and fans would often reject the entire sequel trilogy. Said, the conclusion wasn't good. That's okay. I'm not subscribing to any of it. Some fans would say, that's okay. We still have The Mandalorian. And I think The Mandalorian is a very unique case in which there hasn't been as much, I would say, maybe negative sentiment toward how the handling of the story.
Well, they're doing a good job with it too, though, right? Like the sequel trilogy is all over the map. They obviously didn't plan it out ahead of time. Where The Mandalorian, you can tell it's planned out, right? And they're really they're checking all the boxes. You can tell the people who are telling the stories love Star Wars, right? And that's the big difference, right? Where I feel, and we all know, everybody's read, everybody's heard that the prequels, the sequels. Not all the movies were made by people who love Star Wars, right? And I think that's the big difference is you have to love what you're doing, or else you don't believe in it, no one else is going to believe in it. And that's one thing I use in my work every day. If I'm making a feature, or if I'm making a little story, if I don't like it, who else is? I can't sell it to anyone, right? So I think that's the big difference between Mandalorian. You have people who love it and are doing a really good job with it. And so far, it's really hard to find negative comments about, like you're saying, Mandalorian. Almost to the point where it sounds like they want to. I'm also hearing stuff like they might want to, basically say that the sequels trilogy didn't happen now, and they're going to start over from scratch. Anybody else hear that sort of thing? I've been hearing that.
Yeah, it keeps. Yeah, it's kind of rumor until it happens. I don't think Favreau's kind of staying away from that whenever he's asked about it. The last he said was everything's going to lead to the sequel trilogy.
That was misinterpreted, I think, a little bit, because people took that as, it's going to lead up and blaze right through it, and it was like, no, he's got like 35 years or whatever it is in between. He's going to get up and approach it, and you could fill in after The Mandalorian. You could keep going and almost make a whole new thing, if you will, leading up to the sequel trilogy. But I don't think they actually said they're going to retcon or redo the sequel sequel trilogy.
We'll see. Do you find that the Mandalorian keeps coming up with the people that you're talking to as maybe kind of a positive thing that's helping or saving, like for the people that have kind of maybe lost some faith in Star Wars?
A New Hope, you're saying, Steve?
Is the Mandalorian a New Hope?
I haven't found a lot yet. I'm hoping to. Like I've quite a long road ahead of me in terms of still collecting data here. I'm really hoping something comes up, because I do explicitly ask about views of the sequel trilogy and views of the Mandalorian, because it's fascinating. But a big barrier, it seems, for people was access to Disney Plus. Is that from the handful of people I've talked to, is not everyone has their Disney Plus accounts.
Huh. Wow, really? That's it's interesting with the kind of the negativity that's come from the sequel. I just found that a lot of people, at least I'm reading on social media, so I'm doing what I have just criticized. But, they seem to be walking away from Star Wars, right? Like long-term fans have walked away. It's even created this. I don't know if you've heard of the Phantom. Was it the Fandom Menace?
Fandom Menace, yeah.
I guess different YouTube channels and stuff that are basically making videos going after everything that Lucasfilm or Disney does, and some of them, I'm okay with criticism, right? Constructive criticism, when you're saying I didn't like this because of that. But it seems like there's a lot of this out there that it's like, as soon as Disney bought the franchise, Star Wars was over for them, and there wasn't going to be anything that they could do to make them like it. So, yeah, I've lost my train of thought. So my ADD brain.
I think the fandom menace has been around for a while, almost since the prequel trilogy, right? When the Phantom Menace came out, and Jar Jar took a prominent role, and some people thought that they focused too much on pod racing. I think that that upset quite a bit of fans. So I think the Fandom Menace has been around for a while, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. We sort of see, and I think that that could tie back into the generational thing or the different eras of fans is that when another piece gets added, people get upset because it doesn't appeal to them, so they break off, and yeah, that would make for another interesting research project. I don't really have an answer for you there, but I think it's been around for quite some time.
Just has more voice now.
I think people are you get all of us we get so passionate and everything. We all each, and this goes back to the things that all of us, everybody, Adam, you've touched upon. We all have our expectation of what it's supposed to be. Like if you want to go to The Last Jedi, you're like, oh, there's going to be Luke Skywalker. So we all get excited. People have an expectation because you're so familiar with the stuff, with the lore, and you've grown up with it. And again, I think it comes down to that ownership thing again. You can't help it. Even like you go in with some sort of expectation, and when something's different than what you expect, you may be considerate of it, or you may react. It may be a little more traumatic, a little more severe, like, wow, that really went off the rails of what I was expecting, and that might kind of test your fandom. And I think that's, you can overarch everything that's going on right now. There's a lot of people have probably been, I guess, tested, with the sequels and The Last Jedi and everything. And then you get, Todd, you're saying like with The Mandalorian, people who really understand Star Wars and that seeps through. It's apparent that, these guys kind of know they're hitting the right buttons. They know just as a Star Wars fan, and we see it kind of doesn't even take that much to make a really bad analogy, but Star Wars isn't rocket science. Like it's pretty simple, actually. It's emotional, and there's cool action, and there's the morality to it. And I think people feel like, Disney is maybe, what are you guys doing here? It's, wait a minute. No, it's not that hard, actually. Just do this, and this at least. And we can cruise steadily along.
Yeah.
I think you raise another interesting point about expectations too. And I think that goes back to social media and like the connectivity of fans. It's like everyone is, so highly anticipating these new chapters of the franchise, even with Star Wars, Marvel, whatever franchise it is, they have such high expectations and all these theories and knowledge of the lore of, what they want to see and how things might be related. And they come out with these theories beforehand, and they can share these theories openly because we're so connected now that people sort of create these expectations and believe these expectations of, how the story should go. And then when it doesn't go that way, there's a lot more disappointment. So that adds an interesting layer to, to everything: expectations, disappointments, whatever it may be.
It just seems like maybe Star Wars fans out of other franchises like Star Trek or Lord of the Rings and Fast and Furious, as Todd mentioned, maybe are more passionate, maybe more invested in kind of the lore that makes them, that drives them crazy. Because, I find that there's a real difference. Before doing the Star Wars site, I kind of worked on a site that was mostly into Lord of the Rings. And, what I kind of learned from the fandom there and how they act, and I compare them to Star Wars seems to be a little more laid back in a different way. Because I just find that with the Lord of the Rings fans, they tended to be like, well, I read all the books, so I'm a scholar of Tolkien. And it was kind of like when Peter Jackson's movies came out, The Lord of the Rings, it was like there was a lot of criticism from fans that were like the generational fans that were like, this is garbage. What about chapter 4? You know what I mean? It was like that, or like the joke became, oh, he totally missed page 724. This movie is terrible. But of course, social media maybe wasn't as prevalent. But I mean, you could say the Lord of the Rings fans were just as toxic as what we're hearing from the media about Star Wars fans. It was just kind of different, right? Like they were like, these were books first and there were movies, and you could never make a movie to make me satisfied. I think it was easier because Star Wars were movies first. So, that'd be something 10 years down the road to get into is Lord of the Rings. Well, I mean, you have to be a real fan of to want to get into that, but you would see a real difference I think that as crazy or passionate that Star Wars fans are, I think they're way more chill.
That happens all the time too when it comes from books, isn't it? Like I think I hear a lot about Harry Potter too, right? Again, I didn't read any of the books. I'm more of a movie fan, so saying is
dumb.
If it's a good book, they'll make a movie of it. Then I'll get it to it. That's what I usually say. So, so I hear lots about Harry Potter, about same criticisms, right? But like you're right, Steve, that Star Wars was a movie first, and everything else came after, right? Because of the success of that one movie.
It's easier.
And the thing is, Star Wars is different from everything else because you look at Marvel, right? Marvel's putting together a really good playbook, and everybody else is trying to strive for that Marvel model. Like you look at DC, trying to speed up the game like Marvel, but they just screwed up everything and have to start over from scratch, right? So it's very interesting. But Star Wars, we were talking about 4 decades, right? It started 4 decades ago. It was less movies, right? But at the same time, there's still that like Adam was saying earlier, and Jason, like that time period from when people first saw it to now. Where Jen's first experience with Star Wars, what prequels, right? So much different from us. I don't know what Adam's first experience was. What was your first experience with Star Wars? Prequels? It was the original trilogy. What was it for you?
Oh, for me, OT, VHS. Watch New Hope every night in the 90s. Yeah, I didn't see them in theater, but I got the original trilogy on VHS for Christmas one year, and I wore those tapes out.
That's the way to do it, man. Yes.
I feel bad to watch it on grainy VHS. Oh man, like the first experience in the theater. It's like, again, 5 years old, just seeing that for the first time, looking like nothing you've ever seen before. It was just like, just wow.
Yeah. It's funny because Jen isn't here, but Jen's original trilogy was the prequels, right? That's why she loves it. So it was a different experience where, we saw the original like in theaters or grew up with it. So when the prequels came out, initially I was like I didn't hate them, but I was like, this isn't what I expected. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, that's Star Wars. And then after 1, 2, and 3, I thought, that was going to be the end of Star Wars. But in recent years, I've come to appreciate the prequels, like to where I'm watching them a lot now. And, I think I've been told that it was probably because, the sequels pushed me into appreciating the prequels. And it's interesting. Simon Pegg made an interesting comment, which I thought was funny because he's been involved a little bit in the Star Wars sequels. He just said in the comment in an interview, he said, there's something missing in the new Star Wars. And I think it's George Lucas. And it was like, wow, like, does he never want to work for Disney again? But, maybe he'll get away with it. But, brilliant. I just find that it's really funny. So I was half expecting you, Adam, to say, well, I started with prequels, but so you are a smart guy. Original trilogy.
I was young enough to appreciate the prequels when they came out, though. Like I was young enough to still, have grown up with the original trilogy and then be so excited for the prequels to come out. And then, of course, they use the coolest weapon, and they feature it in some great duels in the prequel trilogy for sure. And then, of course, the prequels were my first experience with Star Wars in the theater, and hearing John Williams on theater speakers, blows your tiny mind when you're a kid in that theater, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. I think you bring up another very fascinating point is that, as time has gone on and the sequels have come out, I find myself enjoying the prequels more too, especially, Revenge of the Sith. I think, to me, that's up there among my absolute faves now, right?
Yes.
Totally.
So
And the more time goes on, the more I love it. So it'll be interesting to see if that same sort of temporal element plays into the sequel trilogy. Who knows?
yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I know episode 8's hard to get by, man.
I won't, and I'm one of those guys that, it felt to me with episode 8, and I've probably blubbered this to you when we had our interview. To me, it felt like it wasn't more about it. It felt like they were tearing down one character to make another character like the new characters, so I think that a lot of the older characters were kind of minimized to elevate the newer characters, which I thought was weird because I don't remember talking to anyone when they announced the sequels thinking, oh, they're going to bring back all the old guys and they're going to be the star of the movies and they're going to continue it on, because, it seems like a lot of people think that old guys like us were thinking that, and none of us were thinking that they were going to be in the movies because Disney told us they were going to be in the movies. And I thought it would be like minor and they were going to be the mentors pushing these kids to be the new heroes. And I was fully expecting that, but it just seemed like to be kind of like, dark and mysterious. Everyone just seemed to be a failure, like Return of the Jedi. You see that, and the big Ewok party, and everyone's happy, and you get that picture of them all sitting together, and they're going to go on and save the galaxy. But then it turns out, Han's a deadbeat dad, Luke's a crybaby on an island, Princess Leia's trying to hold it all together, but she lost her son to if he was a Sith or not. You know what I mean? It was like, wait, what happened? Where's Lando? Oh yeah, Lando's in some kind of desert planet hanging out. It just kind of was like, it would have been good for appearances. This was my opinion. And it did kind of hit me with the Luke Skywalker thing, my favorite character. And it was like, he's like milking sea cows for milk and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what is this? But anyways.
Quit drinking it.
Yeah. So where does the research go now? Are you just looking for people to interview constantly and just kind of piecing it all together? Like how does it go from here? Like,
yeah, so we've analyzed so much forum data. Like, we've analyzed so many consumer conversations, specifically around the release of the Rise of Skywalker. That was a huge one. We did a lot there. We looked at news articles, online forum conversations. Of course, I attended the premiere and took notes, and had some light chit chat and stuff like that. And my original plan was going to be very different, like I was saying before, but then COVID sort of happened, and I couldn't do a lot of what I wanted to do, right? So my original plan was going to be going into fans' homes and having them show me their memorabilia and talk to me about the meaning and stuff like that. And that didn't happen. So we looked at forum data, which resulted in, some very, very fascinating findings. And then The Mandalorian came out, and that was very unique. So we have more conversations to analyze. And then as we looked at these differences and how people actively piece the story together, in a way that either works for them or it doesn't work for them, unfortunately, we started to see these differences in era, and that is where the interviews are starting to play in now. Is we're talking to people and getting a real sense of how did you grow up with the brand, how did you interact with the brand, how do you how did you interact with the brand back then, and how do you interact with the franchise now, and what is your views on these different components and different pieces of story. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking to see if, in fact, the era in which you grew up with influences the way you look at the brand. So that's what we're doing now with our interviews. So we're going to keep collecting interviews and keep doing interviews and looking at data until we find nothing new in the data, right? Until we stop hearing new things from people. Then we'll sort of say, I think we have enough, let's analyze this and let's write this up. So that's at the stage we are now. We're still doing data collection. We've analyzed some data, but hopefully soon we'll be able to get the rest of it underway.
Could you imagine what kind of conversations you would have at a Star Wars celebration? Oh man. It would, yeah, you'd be. I just wanted. I was showing you guys this picture before we went live. It was some fandom pictures. So I just wanted to show. Speaking of fans, there's Jason with a couple of people. They look familiar.
I'll never forget that moment with that. I got to quick talk to them, very quick. That was I actually just we were talking about Revenge of the Sith. I got to tell Hayden Christensen, and they told the actors to be quiet because they were trying to push people through for those pictures.
Yeah,
I told them, I said, man, Revenge of the Sith. I said, I'm an old fan. I said, Revenge of the Sith might be the best one. And he just kind of gave me like an approving nod. And I was like, yes, I got that reaction from him. And I just told them they were both great in that. And I told Ian, I said, oh, and I'm a Dragon Slayer fan. And he laughed. And his laughter actually translated to the smile in that picture. So I had a great I only had not even 15, 20 seconds with him, but I made the most of it. It was cool.
Yeah, that was crazy. Awesome. See, and so here's the picture where it was Toronto. Yes. So Mark Hamill came to Toronto for the first time ever. It was a few years ago. And that's my oldest daughter on the other side. Obviously, I'm the ugly ogre on the other side. But I found it, it was crazy, right? So you wait all this time, you get up there, and the photographers just screaming. All you hear is them screaming. They just want you to get up there, shut your face, and get the hell out. It was crazy. And even when the actor was talking to you, like, hey, and they're talking, they're still screaming. All I could hear was like nonsense behind me. It's like, okay, if I was the actor, I'd be like, what? Okay, like, shut up. I'm going to talk for like two minutes. And he actually did say stuff to us and stuff. I remember walking up and I said, I was like, oh, hi, Mark. We follow each other on Twitter. And he looked at me, and I was wearing a really this bad T-shirt that said it was like last second I had it made. It had the website on it, and because the place I was getting it done at, they're like, the actual logo we use, they're like, yeah, no, we're not touching that because we don't want to be sued by Disney. And I'm like, I just want one. It's personal use. And they're like, no, get out. So, and he looked and he goes, and then he looks at my daughter because I would post pictures and tweet at him like it was her birthday and there was all these things. And he goes, oh, I know you, and shook my hand. And in my head, I'm like, ah. But then I'm trying to be all cool, right? I'm like, because look how cool that is. Like, I look like such a dork. But it was such a great. Awesome. But I can remember is them just screaming, the volunteers constantly. And he's trying to talk, and I could hardly hear him. He was like, move, turn around, smile, like, ah. So here's a picture of, more fandom, Jen, if she's still watching. This is Jen with her son. She actually created this out of cardboard from like Amazon boxes and whatnot.
Not her son, the AT-AT in the boat.
Yeah. The AT-AT. It's 9 feet tall or 10 feet tall, all out of cardboard. So
that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And it cost her it was $19, I think. We did an article and she was showing all the different steps. She took pictures along the way, and it was like, this costs $19. And so we post that, and some of the first comments like, that's BS and blah blah blah, and you suck and everything sucks. And so she actually comes in and starts answering comments, right? And I remember back in the day, Lord of the Rings site, people would like just jump all over your throat, and I would always be like, oh, try to justify. And then after a while, I'm like, you can't answer anyone that's going to do this to you. So she was like saying, well, because the only thing I bought was a couple of spray cans and some ties, but everything else she found around the house, and there's like, doesn't matter, you suck, everything sucks. So anyways,
I actually drove by. This is funny. Like, I didn't know she was doing that. I live very close to Jen, the picture. I drove by her house. She had that thing, the AT-AT, on the front lawn, like in the driveway. I thought she was under attack. Yeah. I'm like, what the hell? I had no idea. The thing was bigger than it appears in that picture even. It's huge. And I was like, oh my God. I had no idea she was even doing that. Yeah, it was pretty astounding.
Pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
So Adam, do you have any childhood memories of Star Wars, or did you end up have you gotten to meet any of the celebrities at these very crazily expensive signings or photo ops?
Oh man, I wish. No, I haven't met any celebrities yet, but I'm hoping this research might take me to an interesting place where I get the opportunity. I mean, that, of course, going back to pre-COVID times, of course, that was going to be the plan, go to these Star Wars celebrations and these conventions and talk with people, converse with people, maybe meet a couple significant Star Wars actors. But yeah, that hasn't happened. As for special memories, I mean, of course, growing up watching Star Wars with my dad, I'm sure that's, a common memory is, watching those VHS tapes till all hours of the morning, and then playing with friends. Couldn't always get our hands on the official lightsabers, so connecting those markers together and doing what we could at recess time. And then of course I was big into the Star Wars Legos, man. Like, oh, did I love those Star Wars Legos, building the X-Wing, and yeah, very fond memories.
The X-Wing.
Me and Steve, we when we were younger, they didn't have really lightsabers you can purchase. So my sister played ringette. I'm sure you've heard the sport of ringette. I'm guessing maybe.
Oh, yeah.
So they had colored sticks. They had red sticks and blue sticks. So me and Steve would use my sister's ringette sticks and bash them against each other. I got in trouble lots from it. But yes.
Until Todd got in trouble.
Yeah.
I just remember hitting the roof in the basement and stuff. And that's when we were busted. So and Todd also has every original character, like action figure, in the Darth Vader thing, and we would play with those his room, and it was awesome because Todd liked playing the Empire and I liked playing the Rebels, so it kind of worked out that way. Yeah. So he still has them today.
Still have them today, right up behind that purple curtain.
That's awesome.
So yeah, lots of my toys that I got.
Jason, now it's your turn.
Jerk.
Oh yeah, well I was and like these guys, just a classic. I was there. I was same age as Todd. I was profoundly blown away. I was exactly what you read about. I was the kid in '77 who was just floored. I was a very quiet, thoughtful little guy. Like my mother would always say, I was chill. Like my brother and sister were crazy kids. I was very chill, thoughtful dude. She actually described me. She said it was like I was waiting for it. Like I was waiting for Star Wars. I was chill because we saw it. And I do remember vividly, actually, I remember the theater. I remember seeing the opening crawl and the battle. And I remember walking out into the sun. We saw it in the afternoon, or the first or second weekend it was out. And I'm one of those people. I was never the same. I was just completely, utterly, totally blown away and raptured by it. And I was never the same since. But I mean, same deal. My entire world turned into Star Wars, and it was a wonderful time because Star Wars, in a time when you didn't have the social media and the connectivity we had now, oh my God, did it affect the world, though. It's not exaggerated. It was massive. It was everywhere. And it started off, Spielberg, his wonderful movies came out, and then you had Alien and the Star Trek, and from there we got into computers, and I mean, it was a wonderful time to be a kid, to be young. It really was. Like, we older guys always say, oh, the 70s and on through the 80s. It really was wonderful. There was so many imaginative things, both real world and imagined, and Star Wars really did just give everything a kick in the ass. Really, it really did. It boosted everyone's imaginations. You had, and then the shuttle program, NASA, and through the 80s, and it was just amazing. It really, really did have a massive impact on the world, and I was right there with it as a young kid. I was swept up right in it, and I could ramble on all night about all the wonderful times I've had because of Star Wars.
Well, one of my biggest memories, of course, Return of the Jedi came to the theater, and I lied to my mom, said I was going to see. We had a duplex, and I said I was going to see Krull, but I didn't go see Krull. I went to see Star Wars Return of the Jedi for the fifth time.
I love Krull, but
I went with Steven. So me and Steve went to see Return of the Jedi for my fifth time. It might have been Steve's fifth time too. We saw it together, and that was one of my highlights of watching Star Wars, was lying to my mom, saying I wasn't going to watch Star Wars again, and going with Steve.
Star Wars made you a bad kid.
Well, one
There's
of the very few times I lied to my parents. One of the very few times I lied to my parents.
He ended up playing with matches and smoking because of it. Star Wars ruined his character. Wow. That's
false
crazy.
Statement, right? I just want to say that. False statement.
Funny. Hey, we should shout out to Goldberry too, who's made Goldberry. You made some really good points with the Arthurian thing, by the way. I was going to say that earlier, but she mentioned
became a robot,
and then she says that you haven't lived until you've wrapped the paper tubes as lightsabers.
Oh, yes,
absolutely.
Yes,
everything was a lightsaber too. A broom
everything was a lightsaber. Absolutely. Like you said, the markers. Adam said earlier, you stack the markers, the color marker. Did it all the time, except for one swing, and they all fall apart. That was the worst thing. But I remember making the sound effects in my head in school. Yeah.
Oh god.
The one thing that didn't work was the toilet paper rolls.
Still for me.
yeah. That was the best thing about Christmas, is to have the longer tube,
I'm
right?
Still guilty of using the. Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you always make sound effects too, don't you? All the time.
You have to.
That's funny.
It's not the same. If you don't make the sound effects.
Well, it's like I shared a picture, I think, within this last week. Remember the paperclip guys? The paperclip, it's just a paperclip. But to me, it's a certain Star Wars spaceship, right? And everybody agreed that they do the exact same thing with it. So it's amazing how the imagination works. You look at something and it becomes a Star Wars vehicle of some sort.
Everything is Star Wars. I see it everywhere.
Exactly.
Okay, guys. So I think that we have scared Adam enough with this, but he's going to start something else. The psychotic Star Wars fan.
Psychotic old men online.
It's like, I know, old guys. So I think we're going to end it there. But I just want to remind everyone who's watching, all 1 million of you right now, to check us out on social media, which includes Facebook, where old people go, apparently, Instagram and Twitter. I will remind you, there's no booty pics of us on Instagram, so you'll have to. Well, I had to remove it. Apparently, it was too steamy for Mark Zuckerberg, so I had to take it down. But anyways, join us again next time, and we have to end it here.
No!